Nous défendrons la liberté que vous enseignez si bien et nous porterons haut la laïcité. Nous ne renoncerons pas aux caricatures, aux dessins, même si d'autres reculent.
Moi, ça m'a toujours choqué de rentrer dans un hypermarché et de voir qu'il y avait en arrivant un rayon de telle cuisine communautaire et de telle autre à côté. Voilà, en tout cas, moi, c'est mon opinion, c'est comme ça que ça commence, ce communautarisme, voilà, je pense. Et moi, je pense que le capitalisme français, le capitalisme mondial, a une responsabilité. Quand on vend des vêtements communautaires, peut-être qu'on a une petite responsabilité dans le communautarisme.
Another day, another attack on Islam and Muslims. What used to be left to the media is now increasingly being taken on by politicians with their unwavering ignorance at display. The media was unable to scare people away from Islam sufficiently, but President Macron has successfully campaigned for Islamophobia and created hatreds towards the Muslim community whilst subjecting them to live in fear and misery. They never tried to put up an intellectual argument for the secularism or against Islam. Now it's the turn of the politicians to divert attention from their wholesale failures to look after the people, lest they turn to Islam in their search for an alternative solution to miserable capitalist hegemony. The French President Emmanuel Macron yearns for the glorious days of colonialism when Muslims knew their place under Western control and passively accepted the domination of the colonial masters. He misses those days and mourns the Arab Spring, in which the Muslims started to reject the colonizers and demand their independence. He concludes that Islam must be in crisis if it leads the colonized to reject the domination of the secular colonizers. Taking further steps, the French president recently said, Islam is a religion that is in crisis all over the world today. We are not just seeing this in our country, adding that he is seeking to liberate Islam in France from foreign influences by improving the oversight of mosque financing. He announced a law against religious separatism and outlined new measures to defend the Republic and its values and ensure it respects its promises of equality and emancipation.
More problem, more grievances and more maybe excuses for the radical groups to exploit, and this will not help the French also policies of integration and homogeneity, and if they in their in parentheses upbringing the Muslim community to the par, this will not help. This will cause more estrangement, more maybe complaints about racism and other injustices. So French will not benefit from this policy, but of course this is politics, and we see the exploitation of these human rights and other issues.
So can a state force Muslims?
His supporters argue that the upcoming draft bill against separatist threats will also include other groups like white supremacists, when it's clearly targeting Islamist movements. French Muslims now fear that extremism or radicalization will not be the only target of the state, and public hatred towards Islam as a religion will increase as a whole. Stating secularism is the cement of a united France, Macron has also defended the right to commit blasphemy in a nod to the Charlie Hebdo cartoons insulting Islam. He expects all French citizens to respect the values of the Republic, while he does not respect the values of Muslims with a complete disregard to freedom of religion and civil liberties. Macron has no tolerance for Islam, but at the same time asks Muslims to be tolerant of insults towards their religion. If it continues like this, the problem won't be the prohibition of respecting Islamic values, but the active obligation to attack them. Then it shouldn't come as a surprise to hear that Muslim kids are forced to eat pork at school, or draw cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, under the guise of being a true French citizen or a modernist citizen. He forgets that Algeria also rejected French colonization with its brutality and inhumane methods of torture and subjugation. He forgets that France used Algeria as a nuclear waste dump and to this day refuses to reveal the secret locations of the radioactive waste. He forgets that anyone with a clear sight can see through the false rhetoric of secularism being the glue that holds society together. Secularism is the root of the problem in which the system serves the interests of the powerful at the expense of ordinary people. Might is all that matters in a democracy, and the secularists are not even ashamed to say it. If they knew shame and honor, apologists for secularism like Macron himself should be ashamed of the atrocities that are committed across the world in the name of secularism. If they knew intellect and reason, they should reject the secular ideology outright, for not only is it visibly failing to create any harmony at home, but it has no intellectual foundation. The secularists cannot convince the mind of their belief, so they suppress anyone who stands up to challenge it. Then they shamelessly brag about their harsh intolerance. For them, right is known by might, not proof and evidence. They are no different than the common bully, aware of his inferiority, making everyone else suffer his almighty tantrum and inability to face up to reality.
İslam'la derdi nedir ya? Müslümanlarla derdi nedir? Macron'un zihinsel noktada bir tedaviye ihtiyacı var. İnanç hürriyetinden, inanç özgürlüğünden anlamayan ve kendi ülkesinde yaşayan milyonlarca farklı inanç mensubu insanlara bu şekilde davranan bir devlet başkanına başka ne denilir?
Islam is not in crisis and never can be, unlike secularism and democracy. It is not a whimsical fantasy dreamt up by a wealthy elite to subjugate everyone else. Islam was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as the last and final message for all mankind. It is known from its two sources, the Quran and Sunnah, the sayings and actions of the Prophet. It is proven by its intellectual challenge to all people and its agreement with human nature. Islam's political aspect gives secular apologists sleepless nights. The life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is overtly and obviously political, as he, peace be upon him, was engaged with looking after the people's affairs according to the revelation. Despite these Western academics, institutions, politicians and the media spare no expense in their denial of Islam being political, and their shallow attempts to describe Islamist thought as a modern innovation and corruption of the essence of Islam. Surely the disbelievers spend their wealth to hinder others from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will continue to spend to the point of regret. Then they will be defeated and the disbelievers will be driven into hell. Islam has complete guidance on how to structure a society in which the needs of all the people are met. Islam is not short-terms in its policies and vision. Islam does not tolerate leaders who measure all decisions according to how popular they appear to the electorate. Such are the current leaders of the major Western powers today, whose criminal handling of the economy, the pandemic and foreign policy has exposed their real concerns as they leave a trail of death and misery in their wake. The Khilafah or the Caliphate that the Western elite fear and attempt to tarnish with their false comparisons to their ISIS farce will stand as a shield to protect its citizens from colonial aggression. They will no longer be able to enslave most of the world's people and rape nearly all of its resources. They will no longer be able to ignore the environmental damage their corporations do in their insatiable quest for growth. The world will quickly see the fallacy of the capitalist ideology, its failed economic model, and its false secular creed. This is something the selfish elite should rightly fear, but for ordinary people it is a salvation from secular and colonial oppression.